Hey y'all. Yay. Happy Wednesday. I am so glad to be here. So excited to see you. It's a beautiful day outside here in Charleston. I've biked this morning. I've taken the dog for a walk, been pretty active. So I was looking at my hair and it's a little sweaty today. So I'm here every Wednesday at noon. Today's a little different. It's 11. So thank you for being flexible. And, if you're joining live or on the replay, normally we'll be back at noon every week going forward, but my daughter's out for the summer, so can't pick up at noon. So that's the change. Today is her birthday. She turned 7. She's my oldest, so that's super fun. We've been making a cake this week, and we made the cake part, the layers on Monday. We made the icing yesterday, and then today I was just now putting it together, and it's one of those against all grain recipes, so it's kind of different ingredients that I'm used to, and it definitely does not look how I thought it would look, but that's kind of how cakes always turn out for me. I don't think it has anything to do with the recipe, but it tastes good, so that's the whole point. So I'm going to pull up my notes and make sure I can see anyone who joins live. Please say hello. I love the energy. I love getting your questions. I love any feedback. And also, if you join live, anyone who comments or comments on the replay, you will be entered to win my masterclass. It's 90 minutes, 4 ways to grow your business. And it's really all about the practical side as well as the energetic. So it's something I'm really proud of. So if you leave a comment, we will pick a winner on Friday and you'll be notified that that is for you. So we will dive in. Let me pull up Facebook over here just so I can see both at the same time. I know sometimes Facebook does funny things where I can't really see the notes. So it's kind of frozen on my end. Hey, Sarah, thanks for joining. It's so good to see you. Be sure to comment and I'll keep an eye out for any questions or anything that you have. But it's so great to see you. I love when people join live. So you're entered for the winning. That's all you have to do is comment. So today, I wanted to talk about what are you not giving yourself credit for? And, Sarah, I don't know if you've seen some of my other live streams, but sometimes I'm going more like strategic and organization type where we're really digging into bookkeeping and numbers and stuff like that. And then this one is kind of more on the softer side because I like to mix it up. And this is just really, to be perfectly honest, what I have seen makes the biggest difference in business. Like I love talking strategy and numbers and all that. But really this softer side of business is what really, I don't want to say makes or breaks a business, but what makes it something that you love and something that really is sustainable that carries you on. So I want to start with a quote. It's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you are not. So it's unknown. I don't know who said that. I'll say it again. It's not what you think you are that holds you back. It's what you think you are not. And as women, and I'll just use me personally when I'm kind of introducing this, we don't give ourselves a lot of credit. I guess just in my years, about my story, I was a nurse. I kind of had a quarter life crisis. I went to nursing school and became a nurse. And I always would say, oh, I'm just a nurse. If I walked into my patient's room or something and the doctors and the nurses, everybody wore the same color. So people wouldn't really know unless they looked at your tag really well, but oh, I'm just the nurse. And then when I started my bookkeeping business, I'm a CPA, but I'm just a bookkeeper. I would always kind of use that, oh, I'm just this. And I see that with other women. And I'm not really going to use any of my clients in these examples because I don't feel like it's really appropriate, but just in general, seeing other women oh, you look great, yeah, I've lost weight. It was just 10 pounds, or I'm just a stay-at-home mom, or I just have a small business. We really don't give ourselves credit for everything that we do and everything we have built. And, I have a one-to-one coach. I love talking about this with people because, people like my husband was like, you're a coach. Why are you getting a coach? I'm like, because I love being supported in my business. I love someone else calling me on my BS. We can't see the toilet paper stuck to our own shoe type of thing. So I was talking to my coach about this, and this really came up about who I serve and my business. So I do a lot of my content kind of focused on talking to product-based businesses. And then one day it really hit me I actually have a lot of service-based industries. Like, let me take an inventory of my clients. And I realized it was about half are service-based. And then I'm like, I am a service-based business. And then it hit me like, I'm a six-figure service-based business. Like, I see it online all the time, people posting like revenue numbers and six-figure business, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, holy cow, like I'm a six-figure business. And actually, I work part-time and I make more than I ever did working full-time for someone else. And I get to pick up my kids and I get to, be there on their birthday for lunch and, all these things. And like it literally never occurred to me. And I had never talked about it. I'd never mentioned it. So if you see my content now, like I'm talking about this, and it's not from like a bragging, like, hey, vibe. That's not it at all. It's just like literally like look what I've done. I'm so proud of it. And like I know that other people can do this too. I mean, and I like to think I'm special, but I'm not like that special, like it's kind of just these certain things that you build and build and build, and you just can kind of create like this pop moment. But I think it's just so powerful to like realize that. And I, realized how much I was limiting like what I gave myself credit for. I don't know, Sarah, you don't have to like call yourself out or anything, but I'm just gonna talk about my personal experience and just like totally calling myself out here, because those limiting beliefs like really kind of limited how I showed up online. Like I wasn't speaking to service-based providers as much because I didn't feel qualified. And I'm like, I'm really qualified actually. Like I've built my own business and have all these clients that are service-based. So like, why would they go to someone else? Like they can come to me because I'm just a great, I do it. I've done it. I've walked the walk, talk the talk type of thing. So I really like wanted to have this conversation today and give you some questions and exercises to like notice this in your own business. I'm just going to look at my notes. Yes, when we don't give our credit to ourselves, we're really limiting ourselves and we're limiting our businesses, because we, like I'm limiting my business when I don't feel qualified to help service-based providers. But like there's all these service-based providers that I could really support who would miss out if I didn't talk about this. And so I really want you to think about it, not just from your own perspective and, it feeling good to you and you doing, what you need to do to like talk about yourself and give yourself credit. Like it really will help serve, support your clients and your people better, because they'll know about it. Like if you're really good at what you do, you want someone to come to you who that is good, instead of someone down the street who like might not serve them as well. But if you're not talking about what you do, you're not tooting your own horn, they're going to go to someone else. And I always love the saying, got to toot your own horn, toot toot. Like that's what I'll say that in my content sometimes. I'm like, not to toot my own horn, parentheses, toot toot. But here it goes, and if people are triggered by that or jealous, like obviously that's not your doing, that's something within them that they need to deal with. I always like to think when I'm triggered or jealous, it's really something that I want, like I see in the other person and I want that too. Just an example is like, there's a really great, Montessori charter school down the road that like I would love my daughter to go to, and we're on the wait list. And like we know so many people that have gotten in, and instead of being jealous, I just have to like tell myself like it's possible for me too. Like if they're in it, I see them, it's something that can happen for us too, instead of like feeling that jealousy and trigger. So I just wanted to like speak about that for a minute, because sometimes when we are talking about these things, we might trigger people or get some comments or whatever, but really knowing that like that's not ours to hold, that's really something that they're dealing with, and it's not us at all. So just, knowing that, and being around the right people who will celebrate you and be happy for you. So that's just my opinion. So let me see. That's definitely, yeah. So I just feel like we could so all relate to this. And I love the saying, what is personal is universal, because like I said, like I like to think I'm special, but really like what I'm going through is what so many other people are going through. And when we really give ourselves credit, we can change so much. And I'm such a believer, it goes back to my why. Like I think that if I can support business owners, especially women, we are the ones that improve our communities. Like we are the ones going out there and like buying the teacher gifts and like supporting the coffee shop down the road. Like our community really thrives when we, the women, have the money. And so when our businesses do well and we give ourselves credit, that's when we do well and our community does well. So little side tangent there. But this realization that like what I wasn't giving myself credit for hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I don't even know like how it came up. Like it literally just kind of popped in my head one day. So I started thinking about like, what other things am I not giving myself credit for? And how do I go about like finding those things? So I kind of wrote down 6 things that we'll talk about. They're kind of like takeaways that, you can kind of do them in this order or do them out of order or do one or do whatever feels good to you. But this is just kind of a process that if you're doing this on your own, you can kind of walk through this. And also like doing this with someone else, I think is so powerful. Like I did, walked through some other things with my coach, and I offer free Get Honest with Your Strategy and Scale call. And this is something I love walking through with people too, because, literally one call I had last week, she's been in business for 12 years. She's gone through a pandemic. She had 4 kids, and she wasn't giving herself all the credit for building this business. And it was just like, can you just like appreciate, let's just sit in awe for a minute of what you've done. Like, it's just amazing. And, so, let's talk about this. Let's normalize it, not normalize it, but, just get it out there, not feel bad about it, and just talk about it. Because, got to shine the light on the darkness type of thing. So the first thing I really want to talk about is being enough for you. And how can you be nice to yourself? And would you say that to your spouse, your kids, your friends, whatever? And I say this to my daughters all the time. They're 7, 5, and 3, and they color a picture and they're like, oh, I hate this picture. I hate these birds. I can't draw birds. I'm like, would you say that to your best friend? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, don't say it to yourself. Like, you are your best friend. And I know this sounds so like woo and not probably what you're expecting from an accountant type person, but I don't care. This is really what changes the game in business. I see it over and over. So I'm talking about this. Number one is just being enough for you, whatever that looks like for you. Being kind to yourself, giving yourself a break. I always talk about giving ourselves grace. We need to be the first one to do that, because if we're waiting for someone else to do it, we could be waiting forever or not forever, but it's like you tell your friends or you tell your kids, like, don't do what everybody else does. You're waiting for validation from the outside world, and that's just the wrong place, and it might be a while. Number 2 is celebrate yourself. I am all about celebrating wins, celebrating big wins, small wins. Like, that's my first question when I'm talking to my clients. I love starting meetings that way. Like, what are we celebrating? What's a win? Let's start with the good, because we really get to train our brains that we are the type of people that, we get what we want, we reach our goals. Like, I think of kind of a fitness comparison. Like, if you, stay consistent and do your fitness regimen for a certain amount of time, you might, buy yourself some new leggings or something like that. Or like, when I reach a certain point in my business, I'm going to just buy some ear pods, which is a big thing. And it's not like, oh, I have to reach this point, but it's just kind of a fun little like thing to like treat myself. And it's like, I need the earbuds or whatever. But it's just a fun way to like reward myself. And then my brain like keeps wanting to do the thing that I'm working towards. So, it doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be like, people are like, oh, I'm going to treat myself to an ice cream. And it's like, it doesn't have to be food related. Like, just some way for you to celebrate what you've done, whether it's like taking extra time. For me, sometimes Saturday morning on the porch by myself with a coffee, and it's like, this is my me time. Like, I got a little extra few moments right now. Like, this is a little treat at the end of the week. Whatever that looks like for you, really figure out how to put that in your day, put that in your business, or, just how you can celebrate the things along the way. I'm going to check for any comments. No comments. So number 3, create your own definition of success and happiness. So literally those first 5 years of my business, but really, so I had 2 kids under 2 the first couple of years of my business. Like, I started my business when my oldest was a newborn. 5 months later, I found out I was pregnant, and I had 2 kids under 2 for a while. I was still building my business. Those first years, my goal was literally to stay in business. There was no income goals. There were no client, threshold levels I wanted to reach. It was literally just like stay in the game. And so just having that as my version of success and happiness just made me win. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm not hitting these revenue numbers, or I'm not growing fast enough, or whatever the story I could have told myself. Like I was happy building my business, slowly, every bit of work I got came from referrals, word of mouth. I didn't do any advertising. I didn't do anything like this. So literally just staying in the game and building that business was my goal. And I think it's just so permission giving in your business. We want to like reach the shiny object or have the shiny goal. We see all these numbers online of what other businesses are doing and who's making what. And it's really, I'm all about tooting your own horn and putting it out there, but also realizing that like not comparing ourselves to other people, but really thinking and taking a really good look in our business. Like, what do we want out of this? Like, yeah, the trade-off of staying in the business for those years where I had 2 kids on different nap schedules. It's like, I don't even know when I got work done. It was like one nap, the other nap, the first one napped again, like 2 naps for one kid and 1 nap in the middle of the day. And like, I had blinders on, like I didn't care what anybody else was doing. I just stayed in my lane and kept going. And so defining your version of happiness, defining what works for you in your business and making it great is like such a way to have that great feeling in your business, because just realizing it's a trade-off. Like for me, it was a trade-off to, have the kids at home and not grow as fast. And I was totally happy with that trade-off. I wouldn't change it for the world. And so I really want you to think about in your business, that feeling and that definition of happiness and success, and not worrying about anybody else, and just knowing like, yeah, the trade-off for me might be this, maybe I don't grow as fast, or maybe I do grow fast and then it's just harder on the back end because there's more work coming faster. Like whatever it is, let's not make ourselves wrong. Let's just embrace it and know that that's our choice and that's what we want to get out of this. So number 4, know that you are human. And this one is like, I always say this all the time, like we're not robots. Instead of trying to avoid being human, let's accept it and accept the feelings that come along with being human. Because in business, like there are always going to be feelings. There are always going to be triggers. I always say it's the best lesson in personal development, because we are humans working with other humans. And if you're service-based, people are buying you. Like if you're products, they're buying your products, but when it's service-based, it can feel very personal. Even if you are product-based, if you're making your own products, like that can feel very personal. If you're knitting something or making something with your hands, woodworking, art, we can get wrapped up in, how it feels. And like, I'm all about accepting feelings, but, also knowing like how to control those feelings, how to like really keep our mindset so that we know like, where we're kind of going awry. So we really, want to accept the fact that we're human and give ourselves grace and have those feelings and know that we are the ones in control of those feelings. So getting back to neutral, like I always say, it's great to have the feelings, but we don't want to make a decision from that place. So stepping back, even if it takes you a few minutes, even if it takes you an hour, like whatever you need, don't go in and react or make a decision from just this feeling. I think I've heard that a feeling really only lasts for like 15 minutes if you really sit there and like accept the feeling and, like just let it be. Whereas when we try to push it away or push it down, that's when it lingers for weeks, months, years, and we don't ever deal with it. So if we can just like sit with that feeling, whatever it is, and however you want to like work it out of your body. Like I love to go for a walk, I love to dance, like I do some shaking sometimes. Like my kids, if they see me, I'm like, and then they're like, uh-oh, mom's mad, she's trying to shake it off. These are all just kind of like those somatic release things we can do with our feelings, because we are humans, we are working with other humans, but let's really step back, get our feelings, get back to neutral before we're like going into our business and maybe making like permanent decisions based on a temporary feeling. So let me check any comments. I want to make sure I'm getting your comments. Number 5, practice being versus doing. So, when I think of most of my achievements, most of them are things that I've done and not so much, just being me. So I think of like last fall, I had this terrible stomach bug, and like for 3 days, I was just laid out on the couch. Like that was literally all I could do. And part of me wanted to like feel bad, beat myself up and make myself wrong that I had these sick days, and I had to like, take time off to like recoup and feel better. But, I really had to like practice, like, I need to take care of myself because this is something that will serve me in the long run in my business. If I really relax and really sit in this and let my body heal, then I can go back to what I do. I can go back to supporting people. Same thing when we had COVID earlier in the year. Like I really had to like rest for those few days and just be sick and feel it and, know that I can like come back and, give myself grace from taking that break. And then the sixth thing, this kind of goes back to the give yourself credit. Like the first 5 things, you're probably like, what do these have to do with giving yourself credit? But those are really all about accepting yourself for who you are and what you're doing. And so if we're going to give ourselves credit, we have to kind of have those things first. So it's really hard to give ourselves credit if we're not, giving ourselves grace for being human, or we're not, creating our own definition of success, or we're not, celebrating ourselves and being kind to ourselves. Like those things kind of have to happen first before we're really available to give ourselves credit. And so what I like to do is think about what are things you're not counting or giving yourselves credit for. If you want to do this exercise on your own, or schedule a call with me, or do it with a friend or a loved one, just sit down and kind of go through your day, go through your business, go through your life. And I bet someone on the outside, looking in has a different perspective. And they're like, holy cow, you took 3 kids to the dentist. Like, that's pretty amazing. Like just these little things we can give ourselves credit for. And so every day thinking about either the beginning of the day, the end of the day, I always like to do mindset work, bookending my day. And then if I get a chance in the middle, but really thinking about what can you give yourself credit for that you would normally just like keep going on about your day and not think about it. And really, invite you to write down 3 things a day. And at first, like you might think of the big things that come up, like, oh, your income or your client load or what you've done or achieved or, all these things. And then as you keep doing this day after day, you're kind of like, okay, that's when you're like getting down to the nitty gritty, like the little things that like you probably haven't thought about in a really long time, or something that just kind of got buried underneath all the other stuff. So I really encourage you to like do this for a week, see if you can keep going after a week, writing down 3 things. And then, you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm good. Like I'm kind of scrounging for things, like take a break and then keep going back to it. Like it's just something that I think is fun to just like, I like to have a little notebook and kind of like write down things and just, kind of like the little breadcrumbs that we get to follow to do this, because this goes back to business, because when we are able to show up fully as ourselves and like standing in our empowerment and who we are, what we offer to our people, that's when our business soars, because that's when we can support our people so much better, whether it's products or services. I see this across the board with my clients. When they are really able to stand in their power and own what they do, own who they are, speak what they want to say, that's how they reach their people. They're speaking their truth. They're speaking, from their heart. And that's when like the ideal clients, the people that they love to work with, just kind of flock to them, because that's who, works best with them. And they said it and they gave themselves credit. And now, their business is flourishing. And so, I really want this for you, no matter what you offer, and just having that ability. And, so I feel so lucky to be able to sit here today and to talk about what I love to talk about. And, hopefully knowing that this is out there on the internet and that maybe someone will see this and maybe it'll change the trajectory of their business because of just something I said. It's just such an amazing thing that we have, and such an amazing freedom. And I'm so, grateful and thankful for this, that, we can put ourselves out there and be who we are and support other people, because it's just kind of a cycle. Like, we're all just in this together and we're all just supporting this together. So, writing down the 3 things. And then also, if you're on social media, if you are doing content, I really invite you to write some bragging posts. This is what my coach challenged me to do. So I'm going to challenge you. Her name is Kim Artsinger, so I think she's great. And it was just a fun activity that I had to go and write some bragging posts. It felt very weird. I'm not going to lie. It was stuff that I'd never even said out loud before, like not even to my husband, like it barely had even crossed my brain. And so getting it out and getting on a piece of paper at first was like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? And then it's just kind of like, now I just talk about it and I'm trying to put it in all my content, just like let people know this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I've built. I would love to support you too. Like, it's just kind of this like part of my content now, and it doesn't feel scary or weird. The sky didn't fall out because I wrote a bragging post. So I really invite you, challenge you to do this in a loving way, giving you a gentle, loving nudge to really put it out there as well. So let me know if you have any questions. Again, I am just so grateful to be here. If you have any questions or comments, leave them and I'll get back to you. So we've got some great ones coming up this month. If you have any ideas of anything you would want to see that would be helpful to you, please let me know, because we schedule these months in advance. But if you have something in mind, I would love to be able to support you and offer that. Let's see. What was the biggest way you showed up after deciding to give yourself more credit? How did you put yourself out there to better advertise your services once you decided to promote yourself with confidence? Thank you. I don't know when you wrote this. I'm just now seeing it. So yeah, doing this is definitely something that I wanted to talk about, and putting myself out there. But also, like I mentioned, just in my content, I don't know when the last one was. I basically have like bragging posts. And so I'm kind of like sprinkling those into my work. I'm also, I promote my free calls. And so I'll always kind of I'm on Instagram a lot too. So I'll do a reel where I talk about a call that I had with a client, or a free call that I had, and then kind of what we worked on and like how I supported them and how they walked away with these great steps. I like to do a testimonial, maybe not, I don't know if we do them every week, but I'm trying to get on a weekly schedule with those. We've got tons of testimonials, so trying to like shout those from the rooftops. And then I am just sprinkling in my content. Like, I'm a 6-figure business. I've built my own 6-figure business. I take home more, working part-time, and I'll work a little bit more once they're back in school, but it's still less than full-time. And I still make more than I ever did working for someone else. And, I was a nurse in a hospital and I worked a lot of overtime. I was single, I'd moved to a new town. Sure, I'll pick up some hours, but even then I didn't make as much as I do working now. And this is kind of a side tangent, but recently my mom sent me some old emails. And this is when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I was working as a nurse in a dermatologist's office, and I was really like, what am I going to do about money? Because me working in the dermatologist's office basically paid for her to be in daycare, but I needed her to be in daycare so I could work. So it was basically this, just like, it washed each other out. And at the time, it never occurred to me to start a business. Like, after she was born, a friend gave me the idea. He's a CPA, and he's like, we always need good bookkeepers. But literally, when I was pregnant, like, the thought to start my own business just never occurred to me. I was like emailing with my mom, like, what should I do? Should I work like some night shifts on the weekends? Or like, I just don't know. The doctor I work for offered me $1 an hour raise. And my mom sent me this email, and, it was just like, look how far you've come. And I was like, holy cow. Like, I can't believe at the time I was like, the doctor I work for offered me $1 extra an hour. Like, I mean, that's just crazy, to think that like, that's where I was. And so, like, talking about this and how far I've come, and I tell everyone, I shout up with rooftops, like, it was a slow process because that was what was right for me. And having kids at home and, them being so young. I had a third child. She's 3.5 now. So when I was pregnant with her, both my other daughters were at daycare, but because I was pregnant and I knew another baby was coming, I wasn't really like trying to get more work. Like, the work always just kind of came and, floated in from like I said, referrals and word of mouth, like a lot of CPA referrals and client referrals, but I really wasn't putting myself out there for work. And so even doing that, like, every year, my revenue doubled. And then like the past 2 years is when I hit the 6-figure mark. And so, if you're looking at my content, Sarah, like I'm trying to sprinkle it in like all the time, at least once a week, have a post about that, because I'm really like, as a coach and an advisor, like I want people to know that this is possible for them, even if they have to borrow my confidence, borrow like what happened for me, and just so like that could be me, like I am with my kids' school and being on the wait list. Like that could be us, like that will be us. Like they did it, we can do it too. So, just having that confidence to share and just collectively like be like, this is what's possible. Like, and I'm not special, I am special, like we're all special, but like I don't have any kind of like superhuman, strength, or, I'm always working on my mindset. I'm always trying new things and tweaking things and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Like I don't have some secret special formula. It's literally just like staying on top of your mindset. This is kind of a side tangent. Staying on top of your mindset and, really doing the work to stay consistent and show up in a way that supports your people. So, does that answer your question? I want to refresh and see if there's any more comments, but hopefully that answers your question. I'm really, trying to put that out there in all of my content. Like I, had that challenge to write my bragging post, and it just flew out of me. Like I didn't even, some content I like have to think about it, and, kind of like, it feels not sticky, but I just have to like noodle on it a little more. And that one was one that was like, woo, it just came out of my mouth. Like I guess I've been holding it in and I didn't realize it. So yeah, okay, great. Yes, thanks. So yeah, and just doing that, giving yourself a goal of putting that in your content like once a week, like testimonial Thursday. If you're in the group, I like to have a testimonial thing once a week, and I want everyone to share their testimonials. Like let everyone know, like shout it from the rooftops. It doesn't have to stay on your website. Like post it on in our group, post it in other people's groups, talk about it. And I just think it's a beautiful way to share and get people to get to know you and celebrate you, because that's what we're really all here to do. So we're at 11:30. I usually keep these to 30 minutes, but any other questions? I love having this conversation. It's fun, and and I don't want it, when I make titles for these chats, I don't want it to be like doomsday, what are you doing wrong? Like I want us just to like normalize, like this is something that we all do. And how do we change that? Like how do we flip the script? How can we like give ourselves credit and support our people more? Because that's really, if you're in this group, I'm sure you're very like heart-centered, you're really wanting to help people. So by giving ourselves credit, we're helping our people as well. So that's it for today. So be sure to comment if you're catching the replay. I'm here every week, and I will drop the link for my Get Honest with Your Strategy to Scale calls. These are 30 minutes. I'm going to toot my own horn here. Toot, toot. I always get lots of great feedback. It's just a way for business owners to look at what's going well in their business, kind of look at the challenges, and then let's create some action steps that you can walk away with now, so that you can get started and, keep going, because that's what we're all here to do, is build profitable businesses and really support each other. So thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week. It will be our normal time at noon. And just thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Bye.